So will the Florida Gators wind up in the college football playoff? And will they wind up with the #1 program in recruiting this winter? We'll see. I'm Dean Legge from Dog Post, making you a smarter Georgia fan. Make sure to stay tuned to the end of this video. I've got something special for you about Georgia's rivalry with the Gators. Is Urban Meyer right? Should we all think that Florida will wind up in the college football playoff? Now, let's keep in mind Florida hasn't won the SEC since he was the head coach there. But this week he said that Florida, they should be in the college football playoff. Here's the quote: I think they should be in the playoff. I think it's time. Dan Mullen's built a good program, but I spent 6 years at Florida. Georgia is a big game. Until you beat Georgia, you can't say a thing, and I think this is the year. Well, certainly, Urban had plenty of success against Georgia in his time there, but they've really not had a ton of success against the Dogs since he left. Only 3 wins since 2011 for the Gators against Georgia. So is Florida really poised to take over the SEC East and even the SEC? Look, they've not beaten Georgia with Dan Mullen as their head coach. They've beaten Kirby once since he's been the head coach at Georgia. So even though Urban says you can't talk, you can't say a thing until you beat Georgia, it's a little bit hard to say we should really consider that Florida would be in the college football playoff. Could they get to Atlanta and play someone from the West? Do they have a better schedule than Georgia does in the SEC? Yes. Do I think they'll beat Georgia? Right now, no. Right here, sitting right now, I don't, because I'm not sure that they will be able to score on Georgia in a way that they, really need to. I mean, the Gators under Dan Mullen so far against Kirby Smart has really struggled to score. That's been Florida's downfall. When you think about the 2019 game, going into the fourth quarter with 3 points, that's not how you win football games, okay? And then secondly, when you think about the 2018 game, Georgia really pushed forward at the end of the game and made that into a decisive near 3-touchdown win. So things always change. Florida at some stage is going to win the SEC East. Will that propel them to the playoff? I don't know why Florida folks who are, whether it be Tim Tebow, Urban Meyer, Laura McKeeman, people like that who are, in the media at ESPN or Fox, I don't know why they feel like they have to push Florida. That's what it feels like sometimes. Look, Florida's a really good program, top 10 program. If you want to win the SEC, you're going to have to win those games. They've lost to Georgia in consecutive seasons. They lost to LSU by double digits last year, like a lot of teams. So how are you going to transition from there to the college football playoff? They're going to have to be a lot better. Right now, the betting odds are that they don't win the SEC East. I would bet that Georgia does, but everyone's right. I mean, there is going to be transition for Georgia because they are, breaking in a brand new quarterback, whoever that person may be. Florida went through that in the middle of the season last year, and that right there showed how good Dan Mullen can be. What he's not shown yet is that he knows how to win a division in the SEC. The Gators are coming out pretty hardcore this week. Tight end coach Tim Brewster tweeting, as you can see, the Florida Gators need to get that #1 recruiting class in the nation. We grinding right now to make it happen, ! I mean, a lot of this is marketing, which is good. You want to sell recruits on that you want to be #1. The problem with that is everybody else is trying to be #1 as well. And Florida, that has been a part that they got better in this past year, but that where they are way behind, I would say Georgia, Alabama, to some degree LSU, but they are behind those programs in recruiting. And what really hurt Florida was this loss this past year to Georgia, because they were virtually convinced coming into the game, even though they were 6-point dogs, and they became the trendy pick to win that game. It was clear they did not have better players than Georgia, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. And there's no doubt Georgia has transition. Everyone has transition in college football. Clemson has transition right now. Certainly LSU does. Georgia losing Jake Fromm, that's going to hurt. DeAndre Swift, that's going to hurt. Well, the Gators lost a pile of receivers, and that's going to hurt them too. There's always transition. That's just what comes first to mind. Nevertheless, there's very good defensive linemen that Florida had. Can Florida win the SEC East? No question. Can they get the playoff? Yes. It's just that they have not yet done it. Until they do it, it's just like Georgia with the national championship. Until they do it, why are people, why is it so why are we so consumed about talking about it? Well, one reason is because that's what we do. We talk, and that's how it goes. You know, the biggest thing about this rivalry in Georgia and the Gators is, you know, when you're losing it, and the Gators are losing it right now. They lost it last decade. It's not a lot of fun. I mean, it is not a lot of fun. And for the first time in about 30 years, Florida lost the rivalry to Georgia in a decade. They're not used to that. They've got a very good coach who hasn't broken through to win the East in his first 2 years. So that's what they're kind of nervous about. What do I think at the end here? That Dan Mullen hasn't broken through is always going to be a problem for him. Just the same way it is for Kirby with the national championship. Until you do it, people won't believe that you will. And that's what's confronting Dan Mullen and the Gators. Why don't you check out right here? We're getting you ready for the 2020 season at Georgia. Dean Legge Dog Post, making you a smarter fan.